Welcome to the Men After God podcast, where you will be challenged and encouraged as you pursue God, achieve success, and raise a thriving family. Join your host, Dustin, and his guests on a weekly journey to grow as husbands, fathers, and men after God. Here is your host, Dustin Alley.
Hey man, welcome back to another week of the Men After God podcast. I'm excited to have my friend Anthony here with me. And it was just amazing getting to know him before we came on here to record and hearing some of his story, what God's doing in his life, the great podcast he's got going over there at Real Men Talk, and just the amazing conference they've got coming up. I really just love his down-to-earth feel. And, you know, the title of their podcast really fits this guy. He's just a real man. We were talking beforehand about how there's no cookie cutter mold to being a man after God. None of us are fit into the same mold. We're all built differently. And I absolutely love the variety and diversity we've had of people that we interview here on our podcast. And I'm just really thankful to be talking with Anthony today. I know you're going to catch amazing value from his content and just his story. And so let's jump right in, man. Anthony, welcome to the podcast, bro. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. And I appreciate it. I've been listening to a couple of your podcasts and stuff, and I really love what you guys are doing, you know, and you're doing a fantastic job, and I am blessed to be here.
No, man. Yeah, we're blessed to have you, bro. It's just been a great thing God's done, and glory to him for all of it, man. And you know, like, especially getting into podcast, it could be a grind sometimes. You guys have been at it for a while, and it just is, but it's amazing to see how God moves through any medium. And, you know, it's just when we put our heads and we put our hearts into something for his glory and by faith, like, he just does work, bro. That's what we've seen. What about you guys over there? Oh,
yeah, same thing. You know, it's just as soon as we started the podcast, it was just like things began to roll that I had never even thought of. And doors began to open, and I'm like, Lord, what is going on? You know, this is phenomenal. Like, you know, how are you using me to do this? You know, that's the question that I ask, you know, and so just as we've progressed, you know, we're getting ready to be 2 years into it. We're getting ready to download or record our 100th episode.
Oh, and man, awesome. Congrats.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's super exciting. We've had some fantastic guests and we've been privileged to be on other podcasts and networking, and God's just opening these doors. And I'm going, oh my goodness, you know, how in the world, because it's all him, you know, I mean, here I am, I'm in Podunk, you know, Southeast Missouri. And so, you know, like before I had started the podcast, you know, like I told you, I hadn't even listened to a podcast. And so
I find that just amazing, you know, because I know for me, when we were getting into it, I was listening to other podcasts to be like, okay, do I want this type of feel, this tone, this stuff? And you're just like, you know what, let's just do it. This will be fun.
Yeah, I live my life that way. It drives my wife nuts, right? So I'm like, hey, let's do something. And boom, I'm going to do something. You know, whenever I had left and started my business, I was like, hey, I come home one day. I was like, I think I'm going to start a business. She's like, seriously? I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna quit my job and start a business. And like, I just do it. God has blessed everything that has come this way. He has orchestrated, he's opened so many doors, and it has been so amazing just to be able to, at times, to sit back and be like, how did you do this? Yeah. How in the world did you make this happen? You know, and at the same time, we're having people call in, you know, hey man, you know, I'm getting emails, you know, guys contacting me, you know, but I've been able to counsel some, and, you know, from, you know, hundreds of miles away, you know, right now, as a matter of fact, I looked the other day, you know, we're like in 38 different countries, and we're, you know, over 10,000 downloads, and, you know, all this stuff. And I'm going, whoa, you know, here I am. I'm a community college dropout from Southeast Missouri, you know, and so, you know, the Lord can use, if he can use me, he can use anybody.
Amen. I love that. Yeah. You even told me beforehand, like, you're an introvert. And being a podcaster and you know, and especially, you know, on camera, and then I'm sure you do some speaking and stuff with in various ways. Like, it's an introvert is not usually what you think of someone that does this. And so let's talk about that for just a second. Being an introvert and coming into this world, what was it like to kind of come out of your shell and get into this? Was it easy for you, or did you see yourself struggling with that?
No, it was terrifying. Yeah, I'm gonna be real honest with you. I'm the type of guy, I don't even care if it's my family. Like there's only so much of people that I can take, you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, I've got to hide. And
I feel that,
it's funny because we had just went on a cruise for the first time this year, and we had taken the whole family and stuff. And the first few hours, it was miserable. You know, people were like bumping into me, and everybody's, you know, and I'm like, okay, I got to find a place to hide. But through this, the Lord has really grown me, you know, and stretched me in ways that have been really uncomfortable. You know, I'm gonna be real honest with you, you know, and He's forced me out of my shell, and I've come out kicking and screaming, and you know, I'm not enjoying.
But you're out.
But I'm out. You know, and you know, and I've noticed that because I've allowed the Lord to stretch me, the connections that I have made with people, I could have never done on my own. You know, I don't like to start conversations. You know, once a conversation started, you know, I'm pretty good. I had an opportunity to baptize a guy here a few weeks ago, and I caught myself, and I was standing off in the distance. Everybody else was standing around talking and stuff like that, and I'm just standing over in a corner by myself. And the Lord's like, really? You're just going to stand here. You're not going to, and I was like, don't make me go over there. Please don't make me go over there. You know, but I did. I went over there, you know, of course, you know, conversed with people and stuff. And it was a beautiful moment. We were able to baptize him and see his life changed and stuff. And so that's what it's all about. You know, I'm seeing rewards of obedience to God, you know, not trying to pat myself on the back because it's not me, it's Him.
No. Yeah.
And so,
amen. I love that, bro. I love that. I was blessed. Just, I've never had, you know, the introvert. I tell people I'm an extroverted introvert, right? Like I come on, I could do this. I get on a platform. I can get in front of people. That's never been a problem for me. But you said something just a minute ago, like there's only so much people I can take. There's times where I gotta be like, all right, I need a quiet room where I could go be alone and no one talk to me. Just leave me alone. Right. Let me go recharge for a minute and then I'll come back out. Right. Yeah. You know, I get that part, but
we go to a fairly large church. You know, we've got about 1,000 members, you know, so awesome. Any given Sunday you got 700-800 people. And so I really enjoy when service is over and, you know, cause everybody's wanting to shake your hand, you know, and I desperately want to be, you know, shake everybody's hand and, you know, be nice and cordial to everybody. And then we leave and I'm like,
that was the most exhausting experience of my life.
Yeah. You know, but I've learned, that it's grown me, you know what I mean? So I enjoy it. And the more I do it, the more I enjoy it. You know, the more I enjoy coming out of my show, the more I enjoy holding conversations with people. And especially when people are like, hey man, you're not going to believe it. You know, I had a guy come to me this past year, our men's conference that we had. This guy showed up. He said, dude, you're not going to believe this. He said, I found your podcast in prison. He said, all I could have was a tablet and it had certain podcasts on there and stuff. And he said, your podcast was on there. And then he come to our men's conference, you know, and stuff. And so it was, you know, those kind of connections and stuff, you know, and I'm like, Lord, thank you. Thank you for, you know, stretching me. Thank you for, you know, pulling me out of my comfort zone, you know, that we can experience those things. And so,
man, that is so awesome. And that's true. You know, growth happens in our comfort zone. Faith happens, or I'm sorry, not out of our comfort zone. Faith happens outside of our comfort zone. Right. Mm-hmm. You know, if we're comfortable with it, we're confident in it. But when we're uncomfortable, we have to have faith and be confident in what God's doing in it.
That's right.
And so, man, that is awesome. I love that, bro. All right. So let's talk about your family. So you mentioned your wife earlier and how you've taken her on a wild ride, apparently, of various adventures. And so, and then also 6 kids. Tell our audience about the kids, man.
All right. Yeah. So I've been married for 20 years and we've got, my wife and I, we've had 5 and then we adopted. My oldest, you know, I was telling you beforehand, and it's a funny story, so I'll let everybody laugh. My oldest just started college. My youngest just started preschool. And so we found out my wife was, pregnant with my youngest 2 weeks after I had scheduled my vasectomy. And so anybody who says that God doesn't have a sense of humor has no idea.
No,
you know, and, I always told myself, you know, it's families. I've always wanted a family, you know, even growing up.
God
my
gave
mom,
you one.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be, people would ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a husband. I want a family. That's what I wanted.
Cool.
And, the plan was for three kids, and, the Lord blessed me and doubled it. And so, but I'm going to be real honest with you.
Over, man. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be real honest. I wouldn't have it any other way. I love it.
Of course.
And my kids are fantastic. So, let's see, I got 19, 17, two 15-year-olds, a 10-year-old and a 3-year-old.
I'm assuming the 15-year-old's a set of twins.
No. So the young man that we adopted is the same age as my oldest daughter.
Okay.
And so that he's lived with us now for 6 years. Oh goodness. 9 years. And
time flies by, right?
Huh?
I said time flies, man.
Yes, time does fly. And so, it's been a journey. Not always easy, right?
Yeah.
Anybody who's got kids knows that it's not easy. Mm-hmm. And, but it has been so rewarding. I've got, my youngest is going to a Christian college. He's going to be a worship pastor. And, my second oldest son, who's 17, he's going to graduate in January, going to the same college to be a pastor. And so the Lord he's just blessed me. And, and so I absolutely, I love being married. I tell people all the time, my wife is the greatest gift that God has ever given me outside of my salvation. And so I love it. Our journey together has been, interesting. God has brought us through a lot. In 20 years, we've seen a lot of things. We've overcome a lot of things. It's not been easy. There's not been much easy about it, other than the fact that God, we keep Jesus at the center of our marriage, and He has brought us every step of the way. And
that's so awesome, man. And so you guys have been together. You said 20 years, right?
Yes. So married for 20 years.
Okay. And how old were y'all when you got married?
So funny story. She was 19 and I was 20. We went on our honeymoon and we tried to rent a boat and couldn't because we weren't old enough. And
hey, I was 19. My wife was 18. I couldn't get a rental car.
So we went and played putt-putt golf. And
there you go. Romance, man. Romance.
That's it.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah. So that you're getting married young, I tell you, I tell people, I told teenagers when I was in youth ministry, like take your time, if it's the one, it's the one, but you need to talk to some people that got married young, because there are challenges you're going to face that people who got married mid-20s, even mid-20s versus late 20s or early 30s, like they did not face. And it's a journey, but it's so great that you guys have made it 20 years now and 6 kids later. It's just phenomenal. So you talked about these journeys and things, and you mentioned how you've been in ministry for a lot of it, but you also started your own business. So kind of share a little bit about that journey and what it was like, just carrying that ministry and that business load, and how your family and stuff interacted with it, and just kind of take us on a little journey of the last 20 years.
Yeah. Okay. So, my wife and I, after we got married, I was 19 when the Lord radically changed my life. Most of us have got a past, and my teenage years was very rough. And, I can almost pinpoint where I was sitting when the light bulb went off. Wow. And it's funny because my wife was like the perfect angel. She had never drank. She had never smoked. She had absolutely no business being with me. But God brought us together, and that event that we had went to where the Lord changed my life. I had only went because she was going. And so a year later we were married, and I was like, God, just put me in somewhere, wherever you want, I got to do something, right? Just out of gratitude, and so we started, like Junior Children's Church. We started working in children's ministry and stuff. And then, several years had went by, and of course we were having our own kids, and I became the children's pastor. And I did that voluntarily for 7 years. I did it full time for 2 years.
Wow.
And so, and at the end of the 2 years, some stuff had happened, and I handled it extremely poorly. And so I had left my position to go work at a factory where I become a supervisor. And, I had actually tried to leave the church, but God wouldn't let me. And so He healed me. Mentally and even emotionally, and He restored that relationship with our pastors. and the staff and all that stuff. And, I've known most of them most of my life. And, my family has been a part of that church for, 30 years or so.
Wow.
And so, he reconciled all that. And so I started working at this factory, become a supervisor, and the entire time I'm back in ministry, just helping out, youth and all these different things. And then all of a sudden the Lord gave me a hunger for men's ministry. So I started that. And then about 2020, the Lord was calling me to start my own business. And I was like, man, here I am. I'm a supervisor at this local factory. I've got a good salary. I've it insurance. I've got, 401k, all that good stuff. I'm like, Lord, why, and it got to the point to where he almost drugged me out of the factory. I was miserable, and, at nobody's fault but my own, because I didn't belong there. The Lord was calling me to do something else. And so I left. And whenever I did, I left to start a cleaning business, and, it bombed like completely. I picked up one customer, and I was like, God, what is going on? And so, lo and behold, I got into excavating and dump truck work and stuff like that. And so that's what I've been doing since that. And the Lord's just opened up doors. It's amazing how whenever you take a step in faith, the Lord just provides. You couldn't foresee everything that happens.
Yeah.
It just happens, and so, I left to start my business, and what was amazing about all the downtime, I didn't realize it was happening then. Now that I look back, there was so much ministry that come out of that downtime, right? Me trying to find businesses and different things like that. Me starting my own business, my first winter was super slow, and, but I never missed a bill. I never missed, God's constantly provided, the entire time. And so ministry, the podcast come out of that, there was just so much growth in ministry, and being able to pour into men's life and counseling and things that I was able to do that I would have never been able to do working at the factory, and it was all because I took a step of faith, not realizing that those types of things were even possible. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, God just continued to open those doors, and my wife has been such a steadfast rock for me. I have got crazy ideas, as I'm sure most of us all do. I think I'm going to do this, and she's like, okay.
How do you think we ended up with the Men After God podcast?
Yeah,
it's exactly one of those. You know what, God? I think this is an idea. I pray you'll bless it.
Exactly. Yeah. And God has, and He's blessed my marriage, and of course, my children. Being able to the things that I've learned, grown as a man, I've been able to instill in my children. Yeah. And we've had a lot of failures. Like you said, there are things that you, when you get married young, you learn along the way. Now, I wouldn't change a thing. I love the fact that we got married young. I love the fact that we had our children young. But one of the repercussions of that is my children had to grow with me. Right. Yes. And so, there were failures along the way, many of them, and God had healed those. And even in spite of all those, God has blessed me beyond imagination. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about faith. I'm talking about family, ministry. Yeah. He has blessed me in those ways that I could have never envisioned ever,
and that seems to have come from like faithful obedience, man. Like that's the word I would use to describe that. Just faithful obedience to what God had called you to do in those moments. And you mentioned failure, and I say this. I think I say it often on the podcast. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I say it often just in life. A lot of people think that failure is the opposite of success, and when truthfully, failure is on the journey to success.
That's right.
It's a part of it. I saw a meme or little picture on Facebook. It talked about how most millionaires have like 7 streams of income, and 1 out of 7 businesses fail. So you have to start like 60 some businesses if that's going to be, the math that you take. It's true. Like, you're cleaning business there. And then I'm sure, I know for me, man, I was 20. I wasn't even following the Lord when my son was born. I grew up in church, and I think our guys know that, but I grew up in church. I got out, I got away from my faith, and I wasn't even following the Lord when my son was born. I was 23, 24. And, but yeah, you want to talk about, like, they got to watch me grow up as I was getting through my late 20s and following Jesus. And what does this look like? Because I didn't have that example growing up.
Right.
And so, not in that extent, not to that extent. So no, man, I love that. I love that story. I love how failure has been just a part of your journey, but you and your wife both, and your children have come out the other side of it.
Yes. I was listening to Greg Rochelle the other day, and he was talking about, he's got a leadership podcast. It's phenomenal. Yeah. And he said that, most people are like, failure is not an option. And he said, I tell my team that failure is a must. He said, you won't ever grow without failure. And that's been proven, because I have failed many, many times, and and growth has come out of all of them. And so, learning the importance of my influence, which is kind of what the men's ministry and different things like that is about, about building leaders and men, and helping us understand our influence, and helping us understand who we are in Christ, right? As men, with using Jesus as our example. And, I was grown for many years, before, and I had many children before I realized the importance of my influence. And I look back and I was like, man, I have wasted so much of my influence, in ways, and because I didn't realize that influence was part of who I was as a man, right? Because all of us as men are born with influence. Like, we don't have a choice. Yeah. And influence is leadership. And so, being able to understand, being, what's the word I'm looking for? Being intentional about using my influence for the glory of God has completely changed my life, my marriage, my relationship with my children, my ministry. Used to, whenever, like my children, I'm a reactor, so, when things happen, I would react, and learning that's not the best option, has changed the way that I parent. Unfortunately, my older children, has not always, seen that side of me, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And so, I'm very stubborn. I'm very, opinionated. And to where I may be an introvert, I'm very set in my ways, or I have been in the past. And so, and I'm extremely opinionated. Ask any boss I've ever had. I'm extremely opinionated. And
you got your own podcast. I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. Like, we start our podcast because we have opinions about a lot of things.
Yes,
we want people to know them. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. That's a journey I'm on. And I share this pretty openly with people. Like, I've dealt with anger problems in the past, and still, the reaction that you're talking about there. Yeah, that is a thing. And
it is.
I'm thankful to be on a journey of growth in it. And, but it's a day at a time. And I don't know about you, a lot of it for me, not blaming anyone or playing victim, but I know the influence on me growing up in that type of environment is kind of, I think, what's led to me almost, perpetuating the cycle. I'm seeking to break it. But it definitely, without the intentionality you mentioned, just leaves us. We fall back to our weaknesses, I guess, is right. So we do have to be intentional with that growth. So, absolutely. 20 years of marriage, 6 kids, one going off to college, one getting ready to graduate preschool. That's awesome. But no, you got one going to, you got everything in between. You've been through adoption. That's a wonderful, wonderful journey, I'm sure, in and of itself. And now you've been through ministry and business. Do you still operate your excavating business? Is that something that you're still active in? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so now you got that. And then you got the podcast now. The podcast you started before you ever listened to podcasts.
Yes.
Real Men Talk. Let's talk about how that podcast came to be. How did you, how did it come to happen? And then kind of the purpose of it all. And then kind of talk about your podcast journey, and go ahead and let this lead into your discussions of where you're going. Because, you shared some of that with me before we got on here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to, so I had never really listened to podcasts. And so I run part of the men's ministry. I run a Thursday night men's group where we meet every Thursday. And I constantly had men coming to me. They're like, hey, I'd love to be there, but I work, second shift, or my kids have got ball games, or, I've got other ministries, and there's a whole list of legitimate reasons, why people couldn't be there, why men could be there. And I was like, man, how can I bring what we have on Thursday nights to the men of it started for just men of the church, for the men of the church. How can I bring that same intimacy and the same, openness to these men? And, somebody was like, you should start a podcast. And I was like, maybe I should start a podcast. And, and that's just the way I am. I'm like, hey, so, our media director, Steve Seawright, who's our editor of the podcast, amazing man, super talented. And I was like, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. He's like, no way. I just bought, this piece of equipment that, for just in case anybody wanted to start a podcast. I was like, well, it must be fate. So let's do it. So we set a date. We started a podcast, and we've had some bumps along the way. We've had people fall out, and now we have Kyler in. Kyler is, unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. Kyler is amazing. He's young. He's, 25, 26 years old, married. He's got 3 kids. He's a teacher, and which is the reason why he couldn't be here right now. And he's a great co-host. And so, along with those bumps, we've learned what not to do, right? And the best way to learn what to do is learn what not to do. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the way that I learn most things. I got to learn the hard way.
It's really the way most of us do, and it's overcoming the fear of that failure, like you were talking about earlier. The fear of those bumps. That once we let go of that, it's when we find the freedom to grow through whatever it is that we're going to be doing.
That's good. That's true. And so I begin this podcast, and it's really just to bring, and it grew into so much more than what I could have ever expected. And so, the lessons that I have learned along the way, that I had to learn the hard way, about my influence. I had addiction to pornography for a long time. And, so learning that my identity is found in Jesus, in the person of Jesus Christ, instead of my sexuality and different things like that. So all these lessons that I have learned, I look back and the Lord's like, okay, he said, now use them, use those lessons, push them forward. And so I use that to just bring intentionality to men's lives. What is it to be a husband? What is it to be a father? And, I was telling my wife the other day, we started a life group, cause I didn't have anything else going on. And,
I feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. And but it's for married couples with children, and I told her, I said, I know that it sounds crazy, but having a 3-year-old and having, a soon to be, or I guess he just turned 19, a 19-year-old, and everywhere in between, we can relate with everybody. Yeah. We can relate to people with young kids. We can relate to people with kids in college, because we have
a few years before you start relating to people with grandkids. And
and so, and that's our heart. We just pour into other people and try to, in the best way, and bringing the especially in men's life, bringing the sense of leadership, who you are as a leader, according to the biblical standards, not the world standards. That you may not hold a title, you may not hold a position, but you are a leader. You're a leader to wife, you're a leader to your children, you're a leader in your community, to the people around you. And to have that and be intentional about that, to use your influence for the glory of God. And in order to do that, you have to be intentional about it. And in order to be intentional about it, you have to know what it is. Mm-hmm. And so the whole podcast and the whole Real Men Ministries has evolved into so much more than what I have ever even thought. One of the things about jumping headfirst into something is you can never see the outside of it. So whenever it happens, like every day I'm going, whoa, this is cool. Oh, yeah. Oh, I didn't know that was possible,
Yeah. Love it. Yes.
And
I think that's part of it for me. Like just, you jump in head first it's one of those things I say by faith, because then God starts working, you see him working, you're like, oh, cool. Look what God's doing. And it's exhilarating.
It is. I heard a quote and I wish I could remember who this quote was from, because it's so good. I'd love to be able to give him credit, but I can't remember. But it was talking about taking a step, right? And every time you take a step in faith that you could not see the door, and I'm butchering the quote, but this is the gist of it, that you could not see the measure of what God is doing just because of your obedience of that step, your intentionality of that step, and the doors that would open up and different things. And and that's kind of the way this whole podcast has come about, and that's really kind of there's been so many life experiences that has put me in this position. I'm adopted, and with that, I come from broken homes, and so I'm able to relate with people there. I've been married for, so I'm able to relate with people who are married, and I've counseled many men who struggle in their marriage. I was addicted to pornography, so I'm able to pour into men's life about that, and different things like that. And so God has just opened up so many different doors for me to pour into men's lives. And that's the heart. That's the heart of Real Men Talk. That's the heart of Real Men Ministries, is to empower men in who they are in Jesus Christ. Yeah. Help them see who they are, that they're not in the, they're not an accident. They're not what this world, the whole toxic masculinity, either people see men two ways. Either they're toxic or they're not supposed to be men at all, and so the entire world is confused. Yeah. And so to help them find their foundation of truth, which is Jesus Christ, is the word of God. Yeah. And to help them find that and then grow from there. And kind of like what you were talking about with your anger, that's something I had dealt with for a long time, because I was around it all the time, and the only thing I ever knew was anger. And, every emotion I ever had, whether it was sad, happy, upset, whatever, it was every one of them. Anger. It came back to anger, every single one of them. No,
yes, I get that.
And so learning to heal. What I didn't know is the wounds that I had put me in that position. And so learning to heal those wounds that we don't ever talk about, right? I had wounds that my wife didn't find out about until God had forced me to tell her, that nobody in the world knew. I never told anybody things that had happened to me. And there was such healing. One of the things God asked me to do, he asked me to write a letter to my biological father of forgiveness, and I'm gonna get choked up. Yeah. It was tough. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done. And one of the things in this, bringing this full circle, one of the things that helped me in that was surrounding myself with men that was like, "Hey, did you write that letter?" And I was like, "Wow. No, not yet." They're like, "Hey, God told you to write that letter." I was like, you guys got quit.
Yeah, but God told me to. You don't have to, right?
Yeah. But surrounding myself with men who push me, right? And I don't want to be surrounded by yes men. I want people who push me to be better. Absolutely. And that's another thing of the whole men's ministry is letting men know that you do not have to do this life by yourself. You need other men. Your influence helps that person's influence. And, the Bible says, if one could put 1,000 to flight, two could put 10,000 to flight, and stuff, so if you can put yourself in a group of men and grow, that you can only grow I'm going to say this, and I hope that the audience doesn't take this the wrong way. There are things that you cannot tell your wife that you can tell other men, right? Not, and I'm not talking about I should have said it that way. There are things
what you're going for there. There's, and it may not be that you can't share it with your wife. It's that the way in which you're going to say it to your wife is going to be different than the way that you're going to say it to another man because of how it's going to relate and hit, which is going to impact the response that you're going to get. Because your wife is going to talk to you as your wife, and she loves you, she cares for you, and depending on what it is, it's either going to ensue some anger or maybe, compassion. But guys, we hear it. I think, especially when we get to the place where we're able to hear and speak about things like that openly, we receive the information, and then we just, we typically don't pull punches. Right. And just throw it right back at you, hit you in the face with it. And does that kind of verbalize what you're going for there?
Yeah. Exactly. And the wife can't really relate, right? She doesn't really understand.
Right. Yeah, because she's not a man.
She's not a man.
She better not be a man. That's weird.
Right. Absolutely. And if you find out that she is, you need to have a talk with somebody.
That's a whole nother podcast, bro.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Can you? Oh man, that's going to be great. We're going to do an episode when you find out she's a dude. Like,
oh boy, I can tell some stories I will not tell on this podcast. And
I'm so concerned about what those stories. We're going to have a phone call later because I want to laugh a bit. But guys, you're not going to hear those until I can proof them. All right, and then we'll talk about it.
They won't be shared in this podcast, and or mine. And so just so we're clear, just so we're clear. Although go check out my podcast too, and
absolutely.
She can't understand the way that a group of men can. And I tell people all the time, this is something that every man needs to understand. If you are wanting to grow in your relationship with Jesus Christ, you need a Paul.
Yeah.
Every single man needs a Paul, somebody to pour into their life constantly.
Speaking so much truth right there.
That can guide you, that can direct you, that can teach you, help teach you, and then kick you in your pants when you're off your course. But at the same time, every man needs a Timothy. Somebody that you are pouring into that keeps you accountable, because if you're going to pour into somebody's life, you have to understand that you're accountable for that. Yeah. And of course, those things will change over time. Those positions will change over time. You may have somebody else step up. You may outgrow the person that is a Paul, not in a bad way. Right. But then you need somebody who's a little more mature to continue pouring into you. And if you do not have those, you should seek those, and you need both.
Absolutely.
And really you also need a Silas. You need somebody that is a friend, that is that you can take along with your journey, that you can, that is a friend that will help you, that doesn't mind being in the trenches with you, and all those are, those are so crucial. The Bible says iron sharpens iron, and that's what we do.
Absolutely. And that's, the concept there of iron and sharpening iron, it really is towards men specifically. And the illustration of iron being sharpened, really does apply there. It's not a cute, fun process. It's rough and it's painful. Hurts. And there's shards of metal being ripped off, and you're being refined into something. And so, man, I completely agree with you. Not only, one of the reasons we need a Paul, it's biblical, we need to be discipled, but to need a Timothy. I think people forget the value in pouring into someone else's life, and then also the personal spiritual growth that comes from pouring into someone else's life.
Yes.
When, some people say, when you're learning something, one of the best ways to learn something is to have to teach it. Right. Same thing's true in our Christianity and in our lives, just in general. If we're having to pour into someone, we're having to know it to the place to where we can teach it. And then also, if we're teaching it, unless we're a hypocrite, we're going to be seeking to live that And
that's right. Yes.
That's again a fantastic biblical truth and concept there that we see that needs to be lived out in more men's lives. And podcasting is a fantastic way to pour into people. And you guys doing such a great job over there.
Thank you.
So talk about the future of the podcast. Kind of what's some, if you can, I don't know how much you can share there or what you can, but what's the future look like for the Real Men Talks? Real Men Ministries is the overall. Real Men Talks is the podcast.
Yeah. Yes. So Real Men Ministries, I'm in the process of writing a book. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. I know we talked about it, but I'm in the process of writing a book, Framework for Biblical Masculinity. And in that, so the vein behind Real Men Ministries is to create curriculum out of that and be able to plant Real Men Ministries in other churches or men's ministries in other churches. And 10% of churches in America have men's ministries. And so you have the most, I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but you have the most influential people not even being poured into, right? In 90% of the churches. And then when you take in the fact that only Barna Group come out with a survey, I don't know, a few years ago, that only 17% of people inside the church have got a biblical worldview. That's heart-wrenching. Yeah. And so, when you figure that there's even less men in the church, even less men have got a biblical worldview, and that's dangerous. That's the reason why our nation is in the shape that it's in today. And of course, this problem's been going back for many, many years, hundreds of years, but, and so to help men across the nation, and who knows, maybe God will take it across the world to help them understand who they are in their influence and who they are according to Jesus Christ. And that when we get to the point that we can find ourselves in Jesus Christ and we can surrender, right? Men don't like that word. They do not like the word surrender. But it's something that we have to do, and you see it constantly throughout the Bible, and that when we can surrender to who we are in Jesus Christ, we can grow in ways that we can never fathom. So many people are all about money. So many people are all about, all these different things, working, crazy hours, not spending any time with their family, doing all these, just stuff that the world says is acceptable, right? Yeah. The world says that it's okay. The world says that it's okay to work and not pay any attention to your family. The world says that pornography is okay. The world says, all these different things. And to find our identity in the person of Jesus Christ is so crucial as a man, because if we're ever going to lead anybody in the right direction, we have to understand who we are first. Absolutely. And so that's the vein of the Real Men Ministries, is to be able to do that.
I love that. I can't wait to see what God continues to do with you guys. Can't wait to get your book and read that and just be able to point some people to you. Because I know I love that we're able to kind of, what's the word, cross-pollinate or whatever it is for our podcast, because we are definitely targeting the same people, men. And what you're talking about there of finding your, I would say that your core purpose. What has God made you for? And that's part of our group coaching program that we lead guys through. And then we give them the tools to live out being a man after God. And but it all starts, with that core purpose. This is why so many can pick up a system, a time management system or something like that from great people who use it well and do things like that. But they're one, it's not made for their context, right? Because being a dump truck driver and being a pastor, those are two different contexts. And so like our schedule and our timing and everything else is different. And then also why am I using this system? Why am I trying to do these things? And how is it when we can tie it to living out our core purpose that God has made us for? It changes our approach to life in general. And honestly, what I tell guys is I don't coach you in these things to help you say yes to more things. I'm actually hoping to help you say no to the things that aren't a part of your core purpose.
Yes. And that's just as important. Absolutely.
Because it's said often, you find there's more success in the things you say no to than things you say yes to. But why? Why is that? What I've learned and what I tell guys is it's because you're saying no to the things that don't have to do with what God made you for. And when you say yes to the things God made you for, you see God move in great ways. And so,
yes.
Love it, bro. Love it. All right, man. So we got Real Men Ministries. Real Men Talk is the name of the podcast, available on all major platforms.
Yes.
And then you got your conference. Talk about your conference for a couple minutes, and then we're going to close it out.
Yeah. So Real Men Rally, it will be in April 26th and 27th, 2024. We've got some fantastic speakers. Joe Dobbins from St. Louis is coming in, and we got Jeremiah Wilson from Cuba, Missouri coming in, and these guys are top-notch speakers. And so it's exciting, and it just kind of circumferences the entire thing, of what we do. Being able to bring men together and grow together, it's the one time a year everybody can come together. We rub elbows, we meet new people, and we're able to pour into people's lives and all that good stuff. And this year we got stunt guys coming in and all that stuff, and so it's exciting. Last year I think we had a little over 300 people. And so this year we're expecting, we're hoping for, many more, we're hoping to hit 500 this year. And
that's so cool.
Yeah. And so it's exciting. It's growing. And, it's something that, the men of the community have taken a hold of, that they can be, the men of our church, that they can take it as their own, and as other men come in, that they can pour into, of course we've got events. We do, archery tag and laser tag, and, we've had bull ride, like the electric bull riding. We've had, the little tricycle, drifters, and, we've got all kinds of games and stuff like that. We give away crazy door prizes and all that stuff.
Love it, man.
And so it's open to everybody, anybody who wants to come, it's open. We will have that up and running, hopefully soon. You can find that at realmenrally.com. You can find out about Real Men Ministries, www.realmenministries.us. Of course, the podcast, like you said, is on every major platform. I am also, we are starting to book for speaking arrangements, right? So somebody wanted me to come in and speak at their men's ministry or event or breakout session or whatever it is, they can do that. And,
awesome.
And so, things are moving. God is being he's been so good to us, and, we are excited to see what God's going to do. And, man, Dustin, what you guys are doing is amazing. I've listened to your podcast. It's phenomenal. And, I am so privileged to be on there, and maybe here for too long, you can be on ours. And,
I'd love to. That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it would be phenomenal. And so, it's great. It's great. And I appreciate you. I don't even know how to end this thing, but, it's awesome.
I'll tell you what, I'll take it from you and I'll end it from there. Guys that are listening, man, Anthony has just shared his heart with us, man. If you did not hear what he's been through, and I know we kind of just got the crest, we got the wave tops of his life. The adoption, he was adopted. He's adopted a young person, a child, now 15 years old. He has 6 kids. He's been married for 20 years. And man, they've been through it. But on the other side of that, on the other side of what he deemed as failure, he's seen what success looks like. And he said it, it's not the money. Guys, the success that God has for us is not found in $1. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. If that was what he had for us, he could give it to us. Success is so much more than $1. And you're going to see that as you seek to pursue things and fail, and you have those people, your wife, your children, your close friends that are around you, helping pick you up and keep you walking towards Jesus through all of it. I do hope you'll tune in to Real Men Talks, and we'll have all that information in our show notes that you guys can pick up there. And then I know that I do hope that we'll get another crossover episode, and I'll be on there with them, and we'll definitely share that with our network. And guys, been a blessing to have Anthony here with us. I know it was great value for you. Go give them a subscribe over there on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to it as a show appreciation. And again, Anthony, thanks so much for being here, man. I'll have to connect with your co-host sometime.
Yes, I would love it. I'd love it.
It'll be great, man. All right, guys. Hey, we'll talk next week.
Thank you for listening to the Men After God podcast. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and keep up with the show by following us at facebook.com/menaftergod. You can also reach out to Dustin personally at dustin@seekconsulting.us with any questions or for coaching on being a man after God. Until next time.